This is an AI-generated podcast based on the article When God Called Her to Start Over, How Sabrina Hammonds Built a Business on Divine Alignment, written by Apryl. The article link is in the show notes. Sabrina, thanks so much for being here. I have to start with what really grabbed me about your story. You had 40 clients, 6 years of steady growth, everything coming through referrals, and then it just stopped. Can you take me back to that moment? What was going through your head?
Yeah, it was terrifying, honestly. I mean, for 6 years, everything had worked. I didn't have to chase clients. They came to me, and then suddenly, nothing. No inquiries, no referrals, just silence. And I remember standing in my home office, with my homeschool schedule on one side and my business on the other, and I'm asking God, are we done? Have I done well? And you're calling me to lay it all down? Because that's what it felt like.
That's such a vulnerable place to be. I mean, most entrepreneurs would immediately go into fix-it mode, right? Try new marketing strategies, pivot the offer, but it sounds like you did something different. What happened?
I did, and it was hard because everything in me wanted to fix it. But as I pressed in with the Lord, I heard something different, not an ending, but an invitation to go deeper. He was calling me back to my own foundation. Not to say that I didn't understand who I was in the Lord before, but this was so much deeper. It was understanding how He created me to be and what did that look
Look like in my business. So for 6 months, you basically stopped trying to fix the business and worked on identity instead. That's really countercultural. What did that actually look like day to day?
Yeah, it was. I invested in identity work, deep foundational alignment with how God designed me. And then God sent me one client, just one, and He told me to offer this new approach, identity alignment before visibility strategy. When I watched the transformation in that client, everything clicked. I realized this is the shift. This is why He stopped everything.
That's fascinating. So the pause wasn't about your business failing, it was about God redefining the foundation of how you serve. I want to get practical for a second because you mentioned something in the article that really struck me. You surrender your calendar to God every single morning. Can you unpack that?
Oh, yes. So I was a teacher. And if you know anything about teachers, their calendar is life. I put everything in there, way too much, honestly. I was so driven, such a doer. But I discovered this practice where every morning I give the day to the Lord. I know it's on my heart to do, but I'm like, ultimately, God, you have free reign to move things around, to take things off my calendar. What is my focus? And that has really helped me rest in Him.
So you're not just praying over your day, you're actually giving God permission to rearrange it. That requires a lot of trust, doesn't it? Especially when you've got deadlines and clients and homeschooling happening.
Absolutely. And it's a radical act of trust, because our culture equates productivity with worthiness. But more work doesn't equal success. Sometimes it's 3 specific and targeted things that God says, this is what's on your calendar today. And they produce incredible results, more so than the 10 things that I could have put on there. If I know these are the things that God has called me to do today, even if I have extra time, I'm not going to keep adding stuff. I'm going to trust that what I've done today is enough.
That's powerful. And I think that's where a lot of Christian entrepreneurs struggle, right? We take the world's strategies and sprinkle a little faith on top. You talk about this in a really direct way. What would you say to someone who's built their business that way?
Yeah, I don't mince words on this. If the world says this is the way that you build a business, you cannot take the world's ways and try to sprinkle in faith and say that you're really stewarding this business God's way. It has to be all God's ways. That means when God calls you to do something that doesn't make sense in the natural, like pausing all your growth strategies to work on identity, you do it. But not recklessly, right? Seek wise counsel, those who are also believers. Surround yourself with wise counsel. Ask God for confirmations of what He's calling you to do.
And then comes the hard part, actually stepping out in faith, which is different from just believing, isn't it?
Exactly. We can't just simply have the faith to believe and see the vision, but if we're not willing to take the steps of faith, the actions, then that's not faith. You're waiting to see everything in place before you move, and that's not faith. Does that make sense?
It does, and I love that you keep coming back to Matthew 11. That passage about the yoke being easy and the burden being light, when you're feeling overwhelmed as an entrepreneur, how does that verse actually help you?
That passage is everything to me. When I'm feeling overwhelmed, like he's given me too much to do, I know that's not the Lord because he says my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So I visualize it. I see myself giving to the Lord what feels heavy. And then I see him coming alongside me and we're partnering together. He even says, learn from me, watch my ways. That is so all encompassing because he says we're doing it together. In fact, I want you to learn from me. It's not about doing less, it's about
Partnering differently. That's beautiful. Sabrina, as we wrap up, what would you say to the leader who's listening right now, who's tired of running on empty, who's built something successful, but it feels out of alignment? Where do they start?
tomorrow morning, before you open your laptop or check your phone, spend time with the Lord. Not rushing through a devotional while mentally planning your day, actually being present with Him. Then open your calendar, look at everything you scheduled, and ask one question: Lord, what do you want me to focus on today? Give Him permission to move things around, to take things off, to add things you hadn't planned. The Word talks about how we take our plans and we commit our plans to the Lord, and He establishes our steps. That's really what I feel like is happening. And the biggest encouragement you'd leave us with? Surrender all of it and be willing to say yes to everything that God is calling you to do. And surround yourself with people who are doing business God's way, not the world's way, because it will discourage you from doing things that God is calling you to do. When God stops the referrals, pauses the growth, and calls you back to the drawing board,
It's not because you
failed. It's because He's building something that will last.
Sabrina, thank you so much for sharing your story. This has been really encouraging. For everyone listening, you can find the full article and links to connect with Sabrina in the show notes. Thanks for tuning in to Kingdom Factor Collective.